So this area, Apostle Paul went and asked Jesus Christ a point-blank question. I'll be reading from Matthew 18, verse 21. Now listen. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Apostle Peter, he was one of the apostles. In fact, the first person that Christ called when Peter and his brothers, they were in the lake shore. They were fishermen. They fish for living. That was their profession. They were fishermen. They fished for living. So they went to go and fish. That was the environment where Christ began to call the first person in his ministry. So this same Peter was the one that went to Christ. Christ was their leader. Peter was one of the two apostles. Perhaps he was a primary figure in the apostles of Christ. So he wanted to ask a question. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, Lord means master. And he said, Lord, in submission, under authority, my Lord, my master, my power, my leader. So the word Lord is just a title for someone that has superiority over you. So he said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when my brother sins against me? I am almost positive that when Peter went to Christ and asked him this very, very sensitive question, I'm sure he didn't say, Master Jesus, can you tell me how many times I'm supposed to forgive my brother if he sins against me? In other words, I'm saying that he did not go to Christ and went closer to God, to Christ's hearing, and spoke quietly. I'm assuming in my mind, I'm trying to put myself in Peter's box, that he went to Christ and said, Sir, how many times shall I forgive my brother if he sins against me? I could see Peter going like this. I wasn't there, but I'm assuming that it is his natural posture, his natural position, implying that I'm frustrated. I need you to help me to deal with this situation. It is highly likely that Peter had been in a situation. Either he was tired of forgiving someone who sinned against him. That's one reason. Or maybe there was a situation in the group of his apostleship, that there was a discussion among the apostles what to do or what not to do or how to respond if someone sins against you. So either Peter wanted to know for his own intelligence, for his own knowledge, or a situation occurred among his peers and he wants to know how to simplify the solution. Or maybe somebody came to Peter and asked the question, what is the process of forgiving? Should I forgive? And if I should forgive, how many times should I forgive? So either Peter had the experience, or there was a situation in his camp, or maybe one of those that were following Christ came to him and asked the question about forgiveness. Either way, I'm assuming that Peter went to Christ to know the answer once and for all, how to deal with forgiveness. So now, Peter went to Christ and said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Have you seen where somebody comes to you to ask you a question, and before you have the opportunity to answer the question, they have begun to answer the question they come to ask you? Let me say one more time. Have you been in a situation where somebody comes to you, trusting you to answer the question, and then the person asks you the question, but before you have the opportunity to respond to the question, the person obliged to answer the question that he asked you by himself? For instance, I, Paul, if I would have gone to, let's say, Jeremiah, and said, Jeremiah, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer me. And then I, Paul, ask Jeremiah the question. But then, before Jeremiah had the opportunity to answer my question, I just volunteered and gave answer to the question. So this is what happened. Apostle Peter went to Christ, asking Christ how many times he should forgive someone that sinned against him. But before Christ had the opportunity to answer Peter's question, Peter said, up to 7 times? You see, Peter went to Christ to ask a question about how many times should you forgive someone who sins. Before Christ had the opportunity to answer Peter's question, Peter volunteered to say 7 times? Up to 7 times? Is it 1, twice, thrice, 4 twice, 5, 6, 7 times? Up to 7 times?